Advanced English Arabic Learning Session 91. They use other people callously and remorselessly for their own ends. If a beautiful woman walks into the room, somebody may calls will hear. An attractive female is in one's immediate vicinity. Reports of exploitation and deceptive trading practices by loan sharks. You get to capitalize on a fellow man being's misfortune, the money pit quotes. I raised the rifle and got the deer in the crosshairs. In France, supermarkets have less of a stranglehold on food supplies. The cowboys goaded their cattle across the meadows. A confidential memo which has been redacted from 25 pages to just one paragraph 25. A steady increase in venereal infection. As the sheep came on board, we grabbed their long shaggy fleeces. The kind of man that could expunge an unsatisfactory incident from his memory, obliterate. My skittish and immature friend, fickle. Putting a bounty on someone's head is putting a price on their death, known as hiring a hitman. Very illegal. A full reckoning is necessary before the country and the Congress can move on. He wanted several pairs of boots to be sold. Water began to seep through the insole, of his boots. Miller promoted him to the varsity for his sophomore season. They put forward cogent arguments for British membership. The doses being titrated according to the response. Oolong, a kind of dark-colored China tea made by fermenting the withered leaves to about half the degree usual for black teas. A door-to-door huckster is a person who sells in an aggressive or ruthless way. They were clearly embarrassed at having to huckster for cash. The merger was their last roll of the dice, and it failed miserably. The aircraft hadn't got diplomatic clearance to land in Mexico. The city's cab drivers are notorious for fixing fares and fleecing tourists. His concept of justice demanded vengeance against evildoers. A spokesman was cagey about the arrangements his company had struck. He felt like a boxer who had been pummeled mercilessly against the ropes. What's wrong is to jack somebody's lyrics and not acknowledge the fact. Lift. When the tide goes out, a lot of boats are left high and dry, out of the water. Your family would be left high and dry by the death of the breadwinner. Take a bit of advice from your elders and betters. Jackal are medium-sized omnivorous mammal of the genus Canis. Parents had to cope with their child boarding at a special school. The artist's refusal to pander to the degraded tastes of the crowd. Yet there are pundits who have dismissed his refusal to pander. They'd been prowling the streets looking to jack someone, rob. Drinking oolong tea could help prevent cavities. He had no major deformities, no hunchback, no peg leg, no limp. Asking those kind of questions could blow my cover. The young man looked embarrassed, as if he were a spy whose cover had been blown. Divers should have a good intake of fluid before each dive. Shareholders in the profitable business must be rubbing their hands in glee. Some schools have not got 2 pennies to rub together. When parents are having a hard time, their tension can easily rub off on the kids. They liked each other and rubbed along quite well, tagged along. The horses were unsaddled and rubbed down. The man who throws a race is a crook for life. Their horse threw its jockey before the race had started. A rave is a large dance party featuring performances by disc jockeys, DJs. Wringer is a device for drying laundry consisting of 2 rollers between which the wet laundry is squeezed, or wrung. Lemon crush is a drink made from the juice of pressed fruit. Firemen hauled on hoses in a desperate bid to quench the flames. You'll crack up if you carry on working like this. Braxton Hicks contractions are irregular and infrequent, known as false labor pains. The government will launch a new health scheme with an outlay of around $1 million. She didn't bat an eyelid when I told her I was moving out, without batting an eyelash. Our boats were laid up during the winter months. I laid up a good store of bread and cheese. Successive plies are laid up until the desired thickness is achieved. Ships are laid up when freight rates are not sufficient to cover the running costs. Lay up is a condition that takes place whenever the ship is temporarily out of use. You gotta outthink them if they outnumber you. Don't let them outsmart you. Several students were lounging about reading papers. In another bowl, whisk the egg whites. He started grooming me when I was a teenager and horrifically abused me for years. This plan still sounds pretty risky to me. I'm not sold on it yet. After seeing the presentation, I'm sold on this investment. Let's do it. It means that the text was quoted verbatim. Cover letters are basically used to weed out people, not to select them. The orchestra played classical favorites to an enchanted audience. She had enchanted the rope so that it simply regenerated when any length was cut off. Fat finger dialing errors, errors made by hitting the wrong key or button on a keyboard, keypad. Writing the economy demanded major cuts in defense spending. The preppy is a pupil or graduate of an expensive prep school. Ballbuster is a dominating or threatening woman who destroys a man's self-confidence. A 36-inch bust is a woman's chest measured around her breasts 36. It is a cynical camouflage for problems caused by the bust. The city was in the lull between the commotion and bustle of the day. A teapot with a chipped spout. He was canned because of a tiff over promotion. Some may choose to work with vulnerable elderly people out of altruism. He tried to create a smokescreen by quibbling about the statistics. Banging sounds emanating from the boiler may be caused by a build-up of scale. The thing you weigh yourself on in the bathroom can be called either the scales UK or the scale US. The operators were accustomed to having their logs scaled for inventory control. Such accidents are the exception rather than the rule. Her experience tips the balance in her favor, to upset the balance of a situation. To scale down its operations in a material way. The jester is a professional joker or fool at a medieval court. They hoped that the king might beget an heir by his new queen. The wounded soldiers were shipped home. The thing that I loved about the Tom and ship was that we knew so much about their characters. I'm still shipping for Edward Anne, support or have a particular interest in a romantic pairing between two characters in a fictional series. Endgame shipping is espousing the view that a certain pairing is inevitable as well as destined to be permanent. The recent outbreak is a timely reminder that the exhibition is timely, since self-taught art is catching on in a big way. Simply put, a client is the one who wants professional service from the company. Whereas, a customer is who purchases products or services. I really opened up to the doctor and got everything off my chest. Now I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I actually steamed most people's clothes and did a lot of cleaning. He'll be the one to throw the first punch, then run to the back when the others steam in. They led a gang which steamed through shops, stealing and threatening violence. Confetti are small pieces of colored paper traditionally thrown over a bride and groom. A good luck charm is an object kept or worn to ward off evil and bring good luck. Extortion is defined as the practice of trying to get something through force, threats, or blackmail. A cowboy gunslinger twirling his pistol around his trigger finger. Getting tickets at this late date is a long shot, but I'll give it a whirl. She was slinging hash as a part-time waitress in New York. Detectives investigating the murder are chasing new leads. Setting up a social networking page can help you get numerous leads. The newswire will be offering 2 different leads for certain stories, so editors can pick and choose. The dog is our constant walking companion and is always kept on a lead. Rules of thumbs for lead times are 1 to 2 weeks for regular post. A useful rule of thumb is that about 10 hours will be needed to do it. We used to drink a glass of water every 2 hours as a rule of thumb. The satirical magazine is known for poking fun at politicians and other public figures. I got a tax rebate, not a huge amount but better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. She drew the curtains, then poked the fire into a blaze. Prod a fire with a poker to make it burn more fiercely. A black hole's life may be even more violent than we thought. The other boat nearly turned turtle several times, turn upside down. She was beginning to wilt as she greeted the long line of guests. I conned him into giving me your home number. It is a total con. If I were you, I'd hang that sweater on the line and let it drip dry. The it girl is the girl that every girl wants to be. It would be rude to stare at that man in a wheelchair, so I keep my eyes to myself. His works are invariably imbued with a sense of calm and serenity. She'd dallied upstairs long enough to put on a little makeup. The vegetable garden, nipped now by frost. A gracious and pleasant lady, she was imbued with many fine and noble traits. From an early age he was imbued with royalist principles. The vexed question of how much money the government is going to spend. Craftsmen chipped the blocks of flint to the required shape. I keep my eyes to myself on the bus, because I don't want anybody to talk to me. They're determined to make the president cry uncle in the budget debate. Cry uncle, originally, this comes from children's games in which the child has to say the word uncle to admit defeat. Don't allow coworkers to push your buttons. When someone says, "No offense," you can say, "None taken." It means you are not offended. Homestead is an area of land, usually 160 acres, granted to a settler in the West as a home, 160. One popular way of living off-grid is to have a traditional on-grid home. If you say that someone is pulling the wool over your eyes, you mean that they are trying to deceive you. You can't pull the wool over my eyes, bamboozle me, hoodwink me. Staff were hoodwinked into thinking the cucumber was a sawn-off shotgun. I wish to have him superseded and to be appointed in his stead. He was hauling a sawn-off over his shoulder. A pacifier, dummy, binky, or soother is a rubber nipple given to an infant. A boy splurged thousands of pounds on online games. The recipients of $500 million that Citigroup wired erroneously will get to keep the money, a U.S. judge has ruled. Wimps is a weak and cowardly or unadventurous person. The president is trying to bring his enemies to heel, bring someone under control. The latest multimedia gizmo, a gadget. She's away on sabbatical, a period of paid leave granted to a university teacher or other worker for study or travel. Her mother was a snob and wanted a lawyer as a son-in-law. The company was dallying with the idea of opening a new office. We offer the highest salary and fringes in the country. People have grave apprehensions about loss of privacy. The release of 100 inmates, who were languishing in Sharjah's jails. The end. Coming next. Session 92.